Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and being 9 o'clock or a little bit after, I guess we better get started. I'll begin today with invocation. I'd like to bow your heads in prayer with me. Thank you, Lord, for our county and cities in it. Thank you for our beautiful place you've given us to live. Be with us as we make decisions today, and be with the people that protect us, the fire department, the police department, the sheriff, the EMTs, and our military. Help us make decisions today that will make this county and cities an even better place to live. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, our first order of business is approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the January 24th minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Second in order of business is the financial report.
I'm going to ask that we essentially skip it for this month. We transitioned to a new bookkeeping service. We had some questions about the first financial report. They got a new one out, but Terry and myself haven't had time to review it before this meeting, so we'll bring in financial report for next month. Sorry about that.
This is for this year's financial status or this month's status.
Yeah, it would
Okay.
just be for this month's status.
Okay.
So she has gotten me a new one. Like I said, Terry and I haven't had time to review it, so.
We're gonna look at the preliminary budget for next year? Like
We
on the
will.
agenda? Okay, that's
At
late.
the end,
At the
so that
okay.
has year-to-date numbers from December of 2023, so we just don't have January numbers right now, but we can review both January and February at next meeting.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Next thing is construction sureties. Michaela, do you want to go over those for us?
Yeah, there's no changes for this month, so unless anyone has any questions on it, I think we can move on.
Then we have 2 subdivision approvals. Would you like to tell us about the first one, Stonegate Developer?
Sure. Stonegate Developers LLC has applied for the subdivision of 22.885 acres of land into 58 tracts located at Old Houstonville Road, Boyle County. The property is zoned R1B, single-family residential. There was just a few minor changes from what you all have in front of you that I sent out in the packets. For one, that hatch tract in the middle, that was always identified as the detention area, so I asked for it to be hatched. But the biggest changes that you'll see on this is there's now a connector road shown to McBee Street to Park Hills to the north, and there's also a connector shown here to the south. To the south is an undeveloped property. It's currently in Junction City, but it's not built out as a subdivision at this time. There was a zone change that occurred on this property, and these were the agreed upon development conditions. One of the conditions was that you could only have 2 connections to adjoining properties, a maximum of 2. Typically for this subdivision, we would be looking at requiring 1 to the north, 1 to the south, and 1 to the east, but with those 2 connectors, with the limit of 2 connections, this is what the applicant opted to do. McBee Street is actually an unimproved right-of-way. It is not, there's not a street built all the way out to here. It kind of ends here, so it wouldn't be a complete connection. So I think Planning Commission will have to decide if that's sufficient for them. We had kind of talked about some different options in TRS. We all wanted to see 1 to the south. There was discussion about going to the east. I would like to see the Park Hills connection, but it would have to connect in here to Elmwood, and there's basically a creek running through there, so it's not an easy connection. It's not really an economically feasible connection to show. So I think that's probably the biggest point of discussion with this. We did not give it preliminary approval at TRS because we needed to see those two connections that weren't shown previously. But is there any questions for me on that, or?
That northern one, that is a pretty good sized water area there. This to
That's
put
floodplain.
Floodplain,
So it's not actually a body of water, it's just, that's identified floodplain area by FEMA. Yeah.
and that would probably require a bridge. Is that a reasonable statement?
I don't believe for the McBee Street connection it would require a bridge. I
Okay,
think it
just asking.
probably would for Elmwood Street, would be
Okay.
my assumption. So I think that's why we weren't really looking to require that connection potentially, but
And how far down does the road that's connecting to come? You said it wouldn't connect.
yeah. Gosh, what would you say, Dale, like 20, 30 feet of a misconnection?
Are you talking about?
We're talking about
Where the
McBee
north
Street.
connector would,
Yeah,
Yeah, it's probably, the blacktop is probably a couple hundred feet.
more than I was thinking.
That's an unimproved, road there. That part of that subdivision has not been completed.
okay.
Could you state your name and?
Dale Shepperson, AGE Engineering.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the main entrance is gonna be that old unimproved road, is that what you're saying?
The main entrance? Yes. Everything that we have in right-of-way there is going to be a road that the county would be up to their specifications to take over. The only things that won't be actually a road until the time comes would be the two, the stub out to the north and the stub out to the south.
And you addressed the tracks, what is it, 7 and 8 there in the flood zone? There's enough property to
Yes,
put
there is.
Put a building on,
Yes, and
a house on it?
we put a note on each track that
Okay.
there is enough property outside of the flood zone
Right.
for those to exist.
Yep, we require 5,000 square feet.
Yeah,
so.
I wanted to make sure, it's hard to scale these things sometimes.
Yeah,
Yes, that would be pretty tough to scale.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my geometry's not good enough for that, so.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, I don't know if I made it clear enough that this is in Boyle County. The city of Danville runs right to the east here, and the city of Junction runs along the south here, but these have not been annexed. Park Hills and this property here have not been annexed by either jurisdiction, so it is an unincorporated Boyle.
And when we looked at this before, Michaela, are we okay with utilities, sewer, water, everything else?
Yeah, I mean, the utility director has taken a look at it. They'll have to be on sewer as part of our requirement, so, I think there is sewer right out there. They just will have
Yes.
to extend the lines.
Yes, of course, if this is approved, then we'll have to get all of the sewer drawings and all that stuff to the city and to the state, but yes.
Okay.
Yes, there is sewer right there on the existing highway.
Yeah, we haven't reviewed construction plans at this point in the process yet, but,
Do I understand, Dale, that if the sewer is approved, that it has to be annexed by Junction?
It should not have to be annexed by Junction. It would not have to be.
I think Junction has the option to do it if they want, if you all want to bring that property in,
I'm
once
thinking
they,
Yeah, I mean, that would be to your
Right.
discretion.
yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. But, we're not requiring it as part of our
Right.
process, but it's certainly
I
something
know the
Junction
mayor
can
had spoke
consider.
of it, so.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that would be welcome.
I
think so.
Any more discussion, or somebody make a motion one way or the other?
I make a motion that we approve?
Okay, thank you. We have
I
a
think we'll
second.
need a preliminary and final. I
Oh, yeah,
apologize.
this is, yeah, make a motion that we give both preliminary and final approval to the proposed plat. I'd like to second that motion.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand, please. Your motion.
Thank you, Dale.
Thank you all.
Approved.
Thanks, Dale. Yeah, so the second plat, sorry, it's not even on the agenda that's in front of you. It got added late. This is a plat that came into us as a minor, and it has to come through you all because it is a landlocked, they're proposing a landlocked lot essentially, so it'd be non-conforming. And our subregs require that landlocked lots of this nature requires planning commission approval. So I'm gonna let Dale explain the plat to you all, why he's proposing it this way, and then we can go from there.
All right, I'm gonna step around here so I can talk to you about the plan. It's sort of-
Do you need the laser?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll start up here.
It's just the red dash button there.
We'll check that out later.
Yeah.
Let me try it over here. Okay, so you see this driveway right up through here? The way this plat makes it look, it sort of looks like that's a county road, but it is not. That's a driveway for the divers to get to their property, which their house sits right in here. About 20 years ago, the Bill Hunley farm, which is the farm to the north, created two tracks, which would be this track to the north of the driveway and this track to the south of the driveway. Now, neither one of those tracks had any road frontage when they created them. And they created them to convey to Mr. Divert, which they did. Okay, so now Mr. Divert,
Can we get it back
Yeah.
for you?
He touched the extra
Don't
button.
click.
Yeah, you just touched the arrow button.
There you go.
my thumbs are also a little bit big. So the Smothers property, which is Jerry and Teresa Smothers, is this property to the west. And they are wanting to purchase part of the Divers property, which is tract A, which is about 13 acres. So this property is not gonna have any road frontage. It's a non-conforming tract. The only way that this tract can be sold off is to an adjoiner, or it would have to remain with the parent tract. So that's what we're doing, is we're creating tract A from Divert to be conveyed to Smothers. And this is, of course, this is the way we have to do it in order for them to get it out of the Divert name and a deed into the Smothers. So it's not really as much going on as what you think, but it is a little bit confusing.
Where is the road frontage then for the Smothers?
The road frontage for the Divert property is this.
The
this
Smothers
driveway
property.
Continues on out.
The
to
Smothers,
Dry Branch.
the Smothers property.
It goes through the Smothers property. Actually,
But the Smothers property has road frontage.
the Smothers property has about 2,000 foot of road frontage, yes, plenty.
And I like the way you represented it too. That's it. Well, that's what that's all about.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dale.
Any more questions or discussion about it? Do we have a motion to approve it then?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, please show with your hands. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Next thing we have today is some public hearings, or a public hearing. And as chairman, I'll declare that we're moved into the public hearing part of our meeting. The first property to be considered is Mr. Patel's Sky Touch Hospitality. And he hasn't gotten ready for this meeting yet, and has asked that we table it again. So that's when we get to the motion part of the meeting, that's what he's asking. And Michaela, you want to tell us about the Hidden Springs properties?
I think we we'll need a,
We actually,
oh, okay, yep. Rita, before you do
Rita,
that, I think
we
we
need to-
just need to take a motion on tabling the Dipak Patel Sky Touch Hospitality to the March
Okay.
meeting.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this one for the Sky Touch Hospitality, please.
Okay, let's go back to the Patel property. We need a motion to table it first. So is anybody?
Well, actually, that's what that was, the
That's what your
DIPAC.
motion was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Patel.
And Mr. Collier,
Second.
are you postponing to a date certain, or?
I think I'd like to just postpone it to the next month and look at it again.
I think that makes sense. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you, Henry.
we have a second. All in favor of table it? Thank you. Motion carries. Okay. Now we'll go back to public hearing on the
Now you
Hidden
have to-
Springs properties.
Now, Rita.
Can you recluse yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, so Rita Douglas has recused herself. Okay. Yep, so we're gonna take this one at a time. Hidden Springs Properties LLC has applied for a future land use map amendment from commercial to low-density residential on a 9.17 acre parcel located on the western side of Houstonville Road and southern side of York Lane in Boyle County. So this is a future land use map amendment. It's required because the current future land use map is showing it as commercial, and they are proposing a low-density residential zoning map amendment to R1A. So this is where the property is. Sorry, that's kind of hard to see, but it's this lot right here. It is half, you can kind of see more on the zoning map. It is half in Boyle County and half in Lincoln. So we are considering the 9.17 acres that's in Boyle County. I believe it's a 17-ish acre tract in whole. When you're looking at a future land use map amendment, the comprehensive plan directs us to look at one of three reasons for why we're considering and potentially approving a future land use map amendment. I think in this instance, we would be looking at the proposed use of low-density residential is compatible with the existing surrounding development. Most of what you see, even though it's primarily zoned commercial all through here, it's primarily residential along Houstonville Road there. This is the manufactured home park in Junction off of York Lane. And then there's some commercial over to the west here along 127. But there's a bit of a buffer area here. So I do feel that that area is probably more appropriate for low-density residential with the type of access, and also the surrounding properties are primarily more residential than commercial with what you're seeing. So essentially for the future land use map amendment, that's the finding that the commission is gonna have to make, is that they feel that the proposed use of low-density residential is compatible with the surrounding area. And that's all I've got for that application. Is there any questions? Dale, did you want to add anything?
And I'm good.
Anybody else want to speak in
Yeah.
favor or opposition? Well, in favor first. You want to speak in opposition to it or in favor of it?
I live at 7140.
Come on up.
You're gonna have to
Can
go
you
to the
come to the
mic.
microphone and please state your name and address?
Chad Douglas, and I live at 7140 Kentucky Highway 300, which is Log Cabin Road. I catch the drainage off this property, and it's unreal, and I cannot take any more water on where I live now. Couple inches of rain, it's in my backyard. I own both sides of the property there at the creek that runs off of this, and it would definitely put it into my house.
Can you show us where your property is?
Let me get,
Can you get the intersection of 2141 and?
I think this is 2141 here.
Right there at the intersection, those three buildings where she's at, my property is right behind that.
So So right in here?
Nope.
Oh, sorry, right in here? Yeah, you can take, just the red dash
It's-
line there.
It's hard to do sometimes.
My property is right here.
Okay, okay.
That drainage ditch runs through here and turns this bottom, this whole bottom here, 4 or 5 inches of rain, that is flooded. So is my yard, both sides of the creek. So this is not, all that's flat. I don't know what they could do about a water
Thank you.
retention basin or what, but it would be massive to hold this back.
Mhm.
My neighbor, she is elderly in medical care, so I've not had time to speak to her. It also floods her property, which joins mine. And I do feel like if this place is gone there and cleaned out, the streets are draining this creek, it'll take me out of that bottom.
And is
It's
your
a fast
property-
runoff.
Is your property in Boyle or Lincoln?
My property is in Lincoln County. But all this drainage area starts right up here where this,
Right.
And I'd spoke with Mr. Galloway on the 17th of February and addressed some of my stuff, and he did bring it to my attention that they do know there is a water issue on this property.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see it if you drive out on York Lane as well.
It's just a lower area from the.
Yes, very low,
It's
yeah.
very low, it's difficult to deal with.
My property, the house actually flooded, I think, in the 80s, and the state went in and put in a new tile, which is in front of my house.
Now, your house doesn't have a basement or anything?
No, I do not have, I've got a crawl space.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
But it's not on a concrete slab either.
No,
if I remember
no,
right.
but I'm slate rock. That's
Yeah,
the
basically,
problem.
Yeah, there's no way to
Yeah,
go
no.
penetrate and go anywhere. That's the
Right.
nature of what it is. And I'm betting the property that we're talking about is also in that same category.
It is, it
I'm
is.
not sure we had any digging in that arrangement. I don't remember though, I only looked at the end of it because I was curious how low it got is what I went out and looked. But I don't remember what the upper part of that picture, whether that's water's
Yes.
coming from that full distance or not.
Those trees that are exactly in that drainage area is the only thing it's holding us back now. I saw significant more water come off of when they cleaned up behind Hardee's and Junction. We picked up quite a bit of water through that time span that they cleaned that area up too.
Well, you get into, since it's a known issue, that's what I'm getting.
Yes, yes,
getting into.
very, yeah.
And are you thinking then this, by putting houses on, it's gonna make it worse?
Oh, absolutely.
help it?
You go to drain streets, yes. Yeah, anything of that area to be cleaned up and built on, it's obvious, street's gonna catch water, and it's gotta drain somewhere.
Yeah, it's gotta drain somewhere.
Exactly.
That's
And this
right.
is the lowest area, and
Nature what it is.
nature is what it is.
It's a concern we could put in to the conditions on this particular one to address somehow. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
I take it there's no storm sewer system out there?
No,
I
not to
think
my
it doesn't
knowledge.
have probably much on that side at all.
No. And, there's nowhere for it to go, my backyard, where it goes.
It's a no-win situation, isn't it, Terry?
Well, I wouldn't say no win, but I have to ask some basic questions. Does Lincoln County have a planning and zoning process and commission?
They're in P&Z, yeah. Luther Galloway with AG&E runs their planning department down there. They
Yeah.
contract out with him. That's who he spoke to. But yeah, they do have regulations. I couldn't tell you what they are. But, so I'm not sure what their standards are gonna be as far as drainage and things like that when it comes to the construction plan, but anything that's built in Boyle is gonna have to meet our requirements of an engineering study showing that any drainage that's anticipated from the buildup or from the development of that site is gonna have to be retained on site and then drained, so.
So the flume and the zone change we're considering is just for the Boyle County property side of it?
That's correct. We have no authority in
And do
Lincoln.
we know what the schedule is for Lincoln County to?
I
do
think it's
they-
going
I
in
mean-
March, right?
Can I address?
Yeah.
Yes.
The planning and zoning for Lincoln County is actually next week. And we're on that agenda for a zone change there as well. And, of course, as far as the drainage, we all know that we're in Junction City, and there is drainage issues all over the area there. There's gonna be the retention area is gonna be on the north side of the property, next to York Lane, right there, right in that area. There would be a little bit up on the front, there is a little bit of a crown right in front of the barn there. You see where the red dot?
Yeah, I
is?
got you,
All right,
red
go
dot.
to the north there, right there, right in there. We're gonna put that's the creek that comes through
Right,
there.
right.
So the retention area is gonna be back in that area. And now on the front here, there is a little bit of a crown in front of this barn. Come down to the south, Michaela.
Okay, right in here.
Right in, up to the west, right
Okay.
there, right there. Okay, now that's what would come out onto your property.
Right, it drains in that, yeah, in that bottom, yeah.
And what we could tell you is, we're not gonna put any more water on you that's already there.
That's what I
If
wanna hear.
anything, we're gonna try to take some of that away.
That'll be, I'm not opposed to this. If you can do something with the water, hey, I'm for growth.
Yes.
You know,
And
I'm all
Dale, I
for it.
appreciate you showing it, because that's
Yes.
where I was leading to, whether we're far enough along to realize what can be done.
Yes, and we know that we will have to address that. Now, we're not far enough in the situation
Right, that's
to
the
be able
thing.
to tell you exactly what we're doing yet, but,
No,
but
thank
I
you.
can tell you that.
The steps we're talking about today have to occur before he gets to the point of being able to formally release what he's talking about
Right,
doing.
right.
But it's nice to hear that he understands the situation.
I guess my question is, if the source of the water is not the Boyle County property, if the source of,
Well, it
Well,
is,
it
in part,
is.
Okay.
yes, it's partly both,
okay.
Yeah.
yeah. And we realize that you all are two different entities, but what we're trying to do, we're doing one project, and we're gonna mesh the two, and we're not gonna, well, we gotta be 6 foot here, and we gotta be 3 foot here, so we're not doing that. It's all gonna be one, and it's gonna work. We just have to go along with both planning and zonings, if that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
Yeah, we're gonna collaborate on this project. It helps that AG&E is the one doing it, and they run the P and Z over there,
Well,
so there's an inherent collaboration.
Luther is the P and Z in Lincoln County. It is not affiliated with AGE Engineering in any way.
Yeah, don't
He
mislead.
has two positions, and that, it's a little
Yeah,
bit.
sorry, I didn't mean to imply any bias or conflict
Yeah,
of
and I
interest.
recognize your group was the expert to ask, give you a solution. That's what we get to ask.
Yeah.
Give a solution.
Mr. Douglas, I just want to add that what Dale is talking about, that he's not going to make the situation worse, that's a requirement of our subdivision regulations, so, yeah.
And I think
Will,
that's
will there
important.
eventually be lots in here that would straddle the counties?
Oh,
like-
yes.
So-
Yes, there will be.
So the division of the property, when you say the whole property is gonna be developed together, some lots will be half in Boyle and half in Lincoln?
Yes.
How do we,
Yes.
how do we handle that? That's,
I mean, that's the way it is now. I mean, it's everywhere like that,
Wow.
it's just,
There's a lot of properties splitting across counties. You get tax due for both sides.
okay.
and a lot of times in that instance, and I'm not saying it'll happen here, but a lot of times, the PVA offices sort of will trade off, you'll take this one, I'll take that one. I'm not saying that'll happen here, but that happens quite often.
Okay. Thanks, John.
Okay, any more discussion? Then let's move back to the regular meeting. Do we have a motion from the commission about approving or denying this subdivision approval? So,
Can I clarify the details of the motion before we do the motion? Make sure we have that clear.
sure.
Director, you looked like you were gonna say something, otherwise I can,
Nope, it's just for a flume amendment.
yes. I was
So-
thinking we're just talking about the flume. And when the ideal is go from the current flume of the commercial to a low-density residential. That's what we're asking about.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Do we have motion to do that?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this. Where this testimony that we talked about today presents the concerns about water, but that's apparent in that region altogether. But it would make sense to approve, is it being in conjunction with the existing flume regulations we have. I recommend that we approve it. Henry, would you, any other additions to this?
I would like to jump in, please. The specific basis for the flume amendment is that there's a clear compatibility between the proposed development and the surroundings, and that's justified by the staff analysis, namely that the proposed use is comparable to the vicinity. There's a mobile home park nearby, that there is new sewer incoming, and that the existing zoning and access make low-density residential a more appropriate future land use than commercial. And all of this kind of points to the fact that this new development will not exceed the capacity of infrastructure in the area.
Well, thank you. You always do a wonderful job on that. Thank you. I'd like
I'll
to
second it.
include
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Well, Mr. Douglas? Mr. Douglas? Could you tell your mom that we're through with your thing and she can come back?
Well, we actually have to go through the zoning map amendment with Hidden Springs, so she has another minute.
Oh,
Yeah.
she reclused for it too.
What's that?
Is she reclused for it too?
I think she recused for all of Hidden Springs, so we have to make the zoning map amendment. We have to hear the zoning map amendment request now.
Okay. So hold
Sorry,
on.
Rita, we're not quite done yet.
I told him I wasn't supposed to.
Yeah, I apologize. We'll come get you in a minute.
So we need a motion to make the zoning map amendment, is that right?
I think we'll need to hear, so it's a different set of findings for a flume amendment versus the zoning map
Zoning
amendment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a second hearing?
Yes.
Yep, there's the second hearing. You get to hear me run through this all again, so, sorry. All right, Hidden Springs Properties LLC has applied for a zoning map amendment from agricultural to single-family residential R1A on a 9.17 acre parcel located on the western side of Houstonville Road and southern side of York Lane in Boyle County. All right, same property. I don't think I need to explain the location. This is the conceptual plan that was submitted. It's just showing a basic lot layout. Both ingress and egress points would be located in Lincoln County, so they're not showing any access point off of York Lane here. You can kind of see the divide of the counties here. I don't have the lot number memorized off the top of my head, sorry. Let me see if I can find it. Do you recall, Dale? Is it about 30?
It's 38.
38, thank you.
Yeah.
This is what the comp plan instructs us to look at. Obviously, we just went through the future land use map amendment, so this is now in compliance with the future land use because it's shown as low-density residential. But the comp plan, when we're looking at zone changes to residential in Boyle County, it's a little bit different than what we look at when we're within city limits. So this is outside of Junction. It obviously borders the city limits, but it's not in the city. The first, sorry, this is a lot of words. I'm not going to read all this. I tried to highlight the big points. You want to look at soils considered prime farmlands, whether that area is considered prime farmland. It is. I didn't put the map up on the slideshow, but it is in the staff report. The majority of this property is in prime farmland. The majority of property in close proximity to cities, including properties that are within city limits, are primarily prime farmland. So it's mostly prime farmland or prime farmland if drained and protected from flooding. The second point that instructs us to look at is surrounding land use, reducing conflicts. So making sure that, what we're proposing here is in compliance and compatible with the surrounding land uses. I think we just made that finding with the future land use map amendment, that, you know, a single-family residential subdivision is appropriate for that area. Proximity to the closest fire station, the closest that I saw was approximately 5.5 miles from the nearest Boyle County Fire Station. Obviously, we're looking at a subdivision that would be in the county rather than being within city limits, so it's gonna have a different level of service than what you'd typically see within city. And then type and width of road. I think it has fairly good access to this property off of Houstonville Road. Knoblich Road is a little bit more narrow, but it's not gonna be on, too much of Knoblich Road here when you're seeing where the access is.
Both of those are to Lincoln's, on Lincoln's side.
Yep, and it's on Lincoln's side, so, you know, it's still something that we have to consider because we would be putting lots in, but they are showing both. So, you know, we don't have much authority to improve the roadways there, but, so just something to consider. So those are the 4 points that the comprehensive plan encourages us to look at in addition to the future land use map, which it is in compliance with, so. When you're doing a zoning map amendment, just a quick reminder, these are the findings that we're looking at. It's in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. The original zoning classification of agricultural is not appropriate, or there have been major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature within the area. I don't think A or B apply in this instance of the zoning classification of ag being inappropriate or major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature. So I think you are looking at whether this is in agreement with the comprehensive plan. So again, the flume and, you know, this direction that the comp plan gave us. So are there any questions for me? Okay. This is obviously a unique lot for Boyle because it is, you know, in very close proximity to city limits. We're not looking at a subdivision that's out in the middle of the county somewhere that doesn't have great access or great proximity to fire stations and things like that. So it's obviously a little bit more unique than some areas in Boyle that we could be considering. But.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion, that we approve.
Well, I think we've got to
Oh,
open the
yeah,
public hearing first, sorry.
Yeah, Public hearing.
We have
Public
any
hearing, so
questions?
does anybody want us?
So Fidel, can you point on the map here, what you're doing for water, or what you envision doing for water?
For, you mean the retention of
Yeah,
water?
yeah,
Well, it'll be,
in the northern.
right there.
Yeah.
Yes, where Michaela's got the pointer at.
Okay.
That's a low area on the property. There'll be a retention, some type of retention in that area. I don't know exactly what we're gonna do yet.
Yeah.
But that'll be, and you can see the blue, can you determine the blue
Yep,
line that
sorry.
runs down? That's an existing creek, that comes down through there. And there is no floodplain on this property. This property is above the floodplain. The floodplain starts a little bit, about probably 300 or 400 foot,
In here.
right in there where Michaela's got the pointer at now.
Yeah,
Everything pretty much gradually drains towards that creek, except for just a little bit up on the front there that I was telling Mr. Douglas, that we're gonna have to, you know, there'll be something right in there that will, you know, that's the breaking point.
Okay.
For runoff. So yes, everything is gonna go towards that creek.
mm-hmm,
And the retention area will be on the north side of the property.
Yep. You know, I forgot to make a comment about the sewer. There's currently a planned project out there to put in a new, to increase capacity out there. They're basically at capacity right now, so under current conditions, they wouldn't be able to accommodate this subdivision, but once that new sewer infrastructure goes in, they will be able to accommodate the subdivision. So basically, the construction and completion of this project is going to be dependent on that planned project being completed.
There's to the northeast corner of the property, there's a pump station right there, northwest, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was
Yeah,
northwest.
the northwest corner, there's a pump station right there, and that pump station is failing.
yeah,
The city is going to put a new pump station in, And of course, this subdivision has to coincide with that because that is the sewer line that we're going to tie into. There would be another option. There's another sewer line to the west of the property.
Over on 127
but
here.
That one would consist of piping it about 400 foot. The best one would be in the back there, but we realize that that new system has to be in place.
Okay, and the layout of the individual tracks require you to use sewer at this location? Is that what we're saying?
It's required based on the zoning district.
Yeah, I thought, I want to make sure we're clear with that.
Yeah, if it was still an ag district, they could technically be on septic.
That's correct.
But
Right,
not in
yes,
any
we
residential
have to be on
zoning
sewer.
district.
That's right.
Yeah.
And make sure,
So
just
we would
stating
not
it
be
out
able to
loud.
approve any plat that came in until they could show us that they would be on.
Because I
sewer.
think the whole layout and the water flow is very key to this, so you got to have space to do that, so that's a really good idea. Say a few words about stone, where it says stone all over the map.
Say that again?
Stone, it says stone several places on the map.
Oh, yeah.
That-
Yeah, we didn't
just a
find a lot of
substrate.
those stones. You know, a lot of times those old calls are stones. Sometimes you find them, sometimes they're there.
Oh, so those are,
It's a called for monument. That's a very rough,
okay, all right.
conceptual plan.
I thought it was describing the ground.
No, that's not the ground. That's a called for monument.
Okay. It's good you ask, because it's not common.
Does anybody else wish to speak in favor of this zone change? Okay, does anybody wish to speak in opposition to it? Then we'll close the public hearing on this and move back to the regular planning and zoning meeting. Does anybody, any of the commission wish to make a motion for this change?
I'll make the motion that we approve the proposed zoning map amendment based on the testimony and documents presented in the public hearing. The proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. And I request this motion include the summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes.
We got a train running?
Find a
Thank you.
place to turn it off.
I'll read it and come back in.
All right.
Could somebody, can Rita come back now? Next, we'll go back to the public hearing and consider the CHDH property. Haley, you want to make a presentation on this?
Yep, so this is gonna be the same situation. We'll have a future land use map amendment first and then a zoning map amendment after. CHDH Properties LLC has applied for a future land use map amendment from commercial and mixed-use employment to industrial on a 6.787 acre parcel of land known as 521 Enslin Ave, Danville. So this property is currently Central Seal. It's an existing business and development that's on the end of, this is Enslin Drive here, this is Letton Drive, I believe David Ave here, and then Stanford Road. This is where the distillery, Luca Mariano's distillery, is going in over here, just to orient you all. So the property, it's our zoning, or sorry, our parcel layer is a little out of date, but they did acquire an additional 3 acres approximately back here. That's still zoned ag, and then this front portion here, the existing zoning is highway business. So again, with the future land use map amendment, you're looking to see if it's compatible with the existing surrounding development, as demonstrated by the applicant. So again, this area is all intended to be part of the distillery for Luca Mariano, so are looking at more of an industrial site there. There is some existing industrial type uses off of David Ave, just here. So this kind of development is a little bit of a mix of light industrial type uses as well as commercial, and then there's some vacant property mixed in. Central Seal's been there for, the first site plan I could find, which wasn't even, the first building out there was from 97, so I feel confident it's at least been out there for about 20 years, would be my guess. So, you know, it is an existing business there. In our whole old highway commercial zoning district, it was a permitted use based on what they were doing. In our new zoning ordinance, highway business does not allow this type of use. It has to be in an industrial zoning district, so that's what we're looking at. So for the flume, you know, I do think there is a good mix of commercial and industrial in that area, so I think it's probably appropriate to go to industrial. But that's what we're looking at for the flume. Are there any questions for me?
I want to clarify your picture here. The little star at the very top is a tract of land. There's still agriculture around that zone?
So, yeah, sorry, we just don't have an updated parcel layer.
Yeah.
But they've got about 3 acres back there that they acquired from Luca Mariano.
Okay.
Luca went through a future land use map amendment for his
Correct.
entire property that became mixed-use employment,
Right.
which allowed for the type of development that he was looking at with the distillery that had some mix of industrial as well as some commercial, like tourism type of things that he was bringing in. And then, I guess after they went through that future land use map amendment, they did a subdivision plat that gave about, I think it's 3 acres, right, to
Yes, yes.
to Central Seal, that was zoned ag. It
Right.
remained zoned ag, and they're starting to use it as part of their business. So the agricultural zoning is clearly not in compliance with what we're looking
And
at.
I don't have any concerns with highway business going to light industrial. If to define highway business, we're going to take this agricultural spot and make it light industry. Is that what you're?
Yep, just those 3
Just those
acres
3
that Central
acres.
Seal owns.
That's what I was
Yep.
trying to get to. We're not intending to take care of any of those other tracts that are still under,
No, and most of this is still zoned ag. Luca hasn't changed that, but he also can use it ag for his warehousing and things
Right,
like that,
right.
for his barrel warehouses as a CUP. So I don't know what his future plan is for that back area, but
okay, yeah, I'm just clarifying how big it is just for that particular tract. And
Yep,
that's okay.
yep, and there is a boundary survey in your all's packet that you can see. I'm not sure, I think I put it in the zoning, yeah.
Yeah.
So you can see this.
Yes.
This is the back area that's zoned ag. These 4 tracts here are zoned highway business currently. So we're looking at a future land use map and then eventually a zoning map amendment for this whole area.
Okay.
Okay, so we've had the staff report. Now, do we have anybody that wants to speak in favor of the change to the future land use map?
I'm just going to add just a little bit more to that. The Central Seal and some of the owners are here. Really what got this started is they need another storage building. They wanted to put up another building. And so they contacted us to lay the building out, and then we got into it, and we got to talking to Michaela, and that's when, when basically we need to get the property updated so that it is at the correct zone. So that's what's brought this about. They're wanting to build a new building, and in order for us to get into compliance, basically this is what needed to happen. So that's why they are here. I just wanted to add that to it,
That's
just so
good.
that
Thank
that's
you.
what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, and like Dale said, that it used to be a permitted use in the old zoning district. We essentially made it a non-conforming use with our 2020 zoning ordinance update. So we, we kind of spurred the need for this zone change
Okay,
and flume amendment.
but we're only doing it on this particular track.
Yep,
this,
well,
yeah.
it's technically 5 tracks, but.
5 tracks,
yeah,
yes.
The
Forgive me,
5
yes.
tracks owned by
Yep.
Central Seal.
Okay.
So does anybody else wish to speak in favor of the future land use map change? Okay, does anybody wish to speak in opposition to it? Okay, then we'll move out of the
Here, public hearing?
public hearing and move back to the regular meeting. And do we have a motion to either approve or deny this flume change?
So I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve the future land use map amendment based on the testimony and documents in the public hearing. The proposed flume amendment has met the directive to amend it as outlined in Chapter 9 in the comprehensive plan, and I request that the summary of all the testimony be presented at the public hearing is included.
Thank you.
Is there any other
Commissioner Nolet,
changes?
might I suggest that you add that the specific criteria that it meets is a demonstration of clear compatibility with the surroundings, basically because it's next to industrial uses and there's a long-time existing industrial business on site.
Thank you. Yes, please add that to the motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Shelley. All in favor, raise your hand, please. Thank you. Now we'll go back to the
Thank you.
public hearing and consider the zoning map amendment. It has all the same criteria that we just discussed, right, Ms. Taylor?
It's gonna have slightly different findings, just like the last one, but, so CHDH Properties LLC has applied for a zoning map amendment from agricultural and highway business to light industrial on a 6.787 parcel of land known as 521 Enslin Ave. Sorry, I didn't update the, locations there. I must not have saved. So this is our conceptual plan here. So again, this front part, these front 4 tracks are zoned highway business. This back area is zoned ag. This is the proposed building that they're looking to add. So you can see the existing structures here. And then they've got a gravel lot area in the back here used for parking and storage of heavy equipment, is my understanding. But the proposed building would not be a permitted use within highway business. Their existing business is not a permitted use, so going to light industrial would allow them to continue operations as they have done for approximately 20 years, if not more, and allow them to expand their existing operations. Again, we kind of covered the surrounding area as far as the zoning, so you can see most of Wetton and David, they're all zoned highway business. This area in the back, again, is Luca Mariano, so he did a partial zone change for light industrial. These are, again, I won't read all this, I apologize, but this is what the comp plan directs us to look at when we're going through an industrial zone change. The first 2 aren't really applicable because it's been an existing business, and they don't generate enough traffic for a detailed traffic study. We're not looking at a new site that we're trying to decide whether it should be industrial or not. This is an existing development, so I found that the first 2 items were not really applicable. Industries should be located in planned industrial parks or adjacent to an existing industry. I do feel that there are some existing industrial uses in the area with the distillery, and like I said, there's some existing industrial on David Ave. Industrial sites should have good access to highways, and when required, rail facilities. The subject property has fairly direct access to Stanford Road. It's just that straight shot down Letton Drive that has about 4 or 5 properties off of it. So it has pretty good access to Stanford Ave. Water, electricity, gas, and sewage facilities in sufficient scale. Obviously, they've been an existing business with no issues for a long time, but any future expansion would require review and approval from applicable utilities. And industrial areas should be separated from other areas by such buffers as major highways, railroad lines, parks, or open areas. The property is primarily surrounded by vacant land to the north, west, and east. It's kind of tucked back in there at the end of Enslin Drive, so it's not really adjacent to any of the businesses on Latin Ave. But, you know, as part of our process, if there's any additional landscaping buffer areas, et cetera, that would be required for future expansion, that's something that we could look at, but I do feel like it's in that location that's fairly, you know, it's just kind of tucked in the back here, so. And that's it. Again, zoning map amendments, you're looking at whether it's an agreement with the comprehensive plan. You also could maybe look at whether the original zoning classification is appropriate, considering it's been a long time light industrial type of use, but. Any questions for me?
Does anybody have anything to add that they want to do this? In favor of the zoning map change? For anybody that wants to speak in opposition to it? Then we'll come out of the public hearing and go back to the zoning meeting. So we have a motion on this amendment to the zoning map.
Can we first ask Henry if there's anything we should add to the motion that should be included?
You have a choice of criteria. You could say that it conforms with the comp plan because of the map and either meeting or being exempt from the industrial guidance, or I like Michaela's point that you could say that the current zoning is inappropriate where a text amendment rendered non-conforming an existing previously conforming use.
Okay.
I do have a question. I wonder, you went through each of the requirements, and you said it has fairly direct access to Sanford Road via Litton Drive. Will this create additional traffic going on Litton Drive and to Stanford Road? We discussed that sometime back with the access
No,
with the distillery.
Of course, if their business, if they acquire new business over the years, I mean, it's hard to say that it won't do any, but there's no plan for it to increase traffic as it is, except the traffic that's already there that they're using as of now. So, you know, if they get some major contracts in the future, yes, I mean, the in and outs will be a little bit more, but we can't really say that it's gonna impact traffic on a daily. Is it gonna increase it on a daily? No.
Thank you.
So, do you have any more questions? Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion then?
So I'll move to approve the proposed zoning map amendment, including the wording that Henry mentioned earlier, that the map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan and based on the findings and documents presented in this meeting.
Do we have a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, show your hands, please. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Now we'll move back to the public hearing part of our meeting, and
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you all.
we have a CH properties to consider. They want a future land use amendment and
We just completed that.
That's the one we just
Okay, I'm
completed.
sorry.
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Well then, so we went back to the regular meeting so we can move on with the advisory committee report.
Nothing there.
Okay, what about budget committee?
Yep, we have put together a FY '25 preliminary budget. You all should have that in front of you with your packet, so I'll just run through, some changes that we made from last year to this year and what we're looking at. My revenues pretty much remain the same, from last year, or from the budget amendment one, I should say. The county gave us a slight increase in funding above what was requested by $1,600 in the last fiscal year. I'm not projecting that we're going to get that again. I don't know what will happen, but I think the plan is to request $75,000 from the city and county again, as we have done, and the $250 from Perryville and $250 from Junction. So moving on, for personnel, I showed a 2% COLA bump, cost of living adjustment, sorry. We typically go based on what the county shows, so this is by no means concrete. We'll just see what the county does, and we'll have a meeting with the personnel committee and decide what that'll be, but that's just what I'm showing for the time being for the prelim. And so then I, adjusted our kind of fringe as far as taxes, Medicare, et cetera, retirement, based on that number. We switched to county insurance, so I'm not showing any funding for that, for our health and dental insurance currently. I don't know if that will end up changing in the future, but that's the assumption that I'm working under right now. For office, I kept our slight increase in advertising and things like that for the comprehensive plan, since we're still working on that, and I expect it to go into some of the next fiscal year. I removed the $5,415 for office equipment. We purchased the large format scanner. That was the increase, the one-time increase. So we kept $300 in there just for potential maintenance and things like that to keep up with the scanner, just to plan for any of that. I did increase computer software slightly by about 350. My math is not great. We are probably going to need to purchase some type of Google Workspace for additional storage needed once we start scanning in more of the plats and plans. It seems like our OneDrive probably won't have the capacity that we need, and I couldn't figure out how to purchase additional storage from Microsoft, so I think we'll look at Google or something like that. We're going to store it on an external drive, but we're also going to do it on the cloud, just so, all that intensive labor of scanning everything in is not lost at some point in the future. I showed a slight increase in computer hardware. We've kind of carried over $1,000 year to year just for when Lisa needs a new computer, but I'm kind of interested in purchasing a tablet for myself so I can have access to maps and zoning ordinances and things like that when I'm at meetings. Moving on to the second page.
Director, on the tablet, was that intended to replace your other computer?
No.
Okay,
It would just be so I could bring it to meetings and things like that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it may not be loaded up with all the features you'd have on your desktop.
No, probably not. It
that's
would
fine.
just allow me mobile access to things when I go to meetings or if I'm out in the field, so. Local travel expense remain the same. That's just gas, fuel, and vehicle maintenance. Contractual services, our audit has a pre-planned, agreed-upon increase as we move through this 4-year agreement that we've got with Kerbau Roads. We are showing the same flat fee for Henry. I believe you confirmed that, that's correct, right? I added in a technical specialist, so this is something new that I'm proposing as part of this budget cycle. I think that we need to start exploring speaking with some type of engineering firm or engineer to provide input, review on applications that we receive in the county, in Junction, and Perryville. We used to have a county engineer that would provide that service for us, but he's retired and the county has opted not to hire a new county engineer, so I allocated 15,000. This is something that I'm gonna need to go through that process of working on a scope of work that we would be asking somebody for, actually identifying a firm that could provide this service, and then go from there. It's hard to guess what we would actually need in our budget, because it's gonna be application specific. You know, if we receive a lot of applications in the county or in one of the 2 small cities, then we would be looking at more funding. We might only receive 1 or 2 next year, and then, you know, we would probably need less. So it's hard to say for sure, but this is something that I'll flesh out if you are all amenable to it.
Yeah, there's a lot, as you and I talked during the financial meeting, there's a lot to work to get this down to a tangible.
Yep.
And starting with the dollar value is a pretty good starting point.
Yep.
Recognizing that as is, it may become very useful, or the whole process may not be as useful.
Yep,
That's where the risk you come from taking on the particular staff.
yep,
And
So-
that comes from the deliverable that the individual provides.
yep.
So, yeah, you gotta have some starting point on here.
Yeah, yeah, and this will probably be a learning process as we go through this and figure out what works best, but I think I'll try and work with Josh Morgan to nail down a scope of work and identify somebody that could help us with this. I don't know if the city of Danville is gonna wanna have the same person reviewing it, or if they'll wanna continue having Josh review it, so that's something else that would need to be worked out as well.
And it
So-
really is just like the same thing, we sit in the tech meeting and you come in and you present, here's the issues we concern, here's the issues that are not a concern. And sometimes that's what you're looking for, is that extra support person.
Yep, yep, for instance, I mean, we just had one subdivision plat that we approved in the county, and another one that's most likely coming if the zone change gets approved and Kelly Griffith decides to move forward. And so it'd be great to have an engineer help review drainage, streets, infrastructure, things like that, that you typically have an engineer review in conjunction with planning
And this is
staff,
one of
so-
those things, are we asking for somebody that they can do the work at home and simply email it to us? Or are we asking for that person to go out and do things?
Yep,
That's where it becomes,
yeah,
Time.
and that'd be a conversation
that has to be a
have.
conversation along the way.
Yeah, so, is there any other questions on that? No, all right. Showing a slight increase from FY '24 budget final for bookkeeping, an increase of 400. We switched bookkeeping services, so they had a slightly increased fee. And I showed a slight increase from the budget amendment 1 for comp plan expenses under commission expense, planning commission. We had 3,000, we spent some of it, it got put in a different budget line item, so I bumped it back up to 3,000, just in anticipation of having to rent space for meetings, things like that. And that's really all I've got for the planning commission budget. I also had the DHB budget, but I'm not sure if we should vote on these separately or together.
I would suggest we separate, because they are very separate.
Okay, okay. So, are there any questions for me?
So your bottom line number there was down in the total capital items and reserves,
Yep.
59,000 compared to 69,000?
So total expenditures, I'm showing as, $225,875.14. So that's down from 236 from the budget final, and then up from the budget amendment 1. I would say the primary difference from budget amendment 1 to this prelim budget is that I'm allocating those additional funds for the technical specialists and engineering services. Obviously, we went down from FY '24 budget final to the budget amendment 1 as a result of switching to the county insurance and not needing that $20,000-ish for health and dental. So our net income, we're showing, so this is carryover from previous year plus anticipated revenues minus anticipated total expenditures. We're showing that as the $69,345.52. As Terry explains, and also the planning commission has agreed to, once that drops down to 40,000 anticipated, that's when we would go to the city and county to ask for additional funding beyond the 75,000 that we asked for now. But right now, it looks like our projection is fine, that we're in good financial standing, so there's no reason to increase that funding at this point, but.
So Michaela, if I read this right, though, we're still showing that we're spending slightly more than
Yeah, we-
current revenue, we're just eating into that
Reserve, yeah.
reserve a little.
You know, we pretty much always project it that way.
Yeah.
I'm generally pretty conservative. I carried over from what Steve did as
Sure.
far as being pretty conservative on revenues. It's really hard to anticipate because it's completely application dependent. So if we have a lot of applications that year, our revenue's gonna look pretty good. If we're not as busy, then our revenue's gonna be worse, so.
Gotcha.
It's hard to say for certain, but, you know, even from the few applications that we had today, I think you can probably anticipate a fair amount of street infrastructure and things like that, which we get a pretty substantial fee from, that could carry over to next fiscal year, so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion, we accept the preliminary fiscal year 25 budget as presented.
For planning commission,
For the
yeah,
plan.
sorry.
I'd like to second that, please.
All in favor?
Okay.
Motion carries. Is there anything for
All right,
personnel?
So now I gotta go through DHB. So this is something that we voted on at last meeting to recommend a text amendment. Sorry, Jim, did I cut you off?
Yeah, I have one.
So we plan on making it effective July 1, so for the new fiscal year of '25. So that would be bringing the part-time staff person, Joni House, into Planning Commission. Our intention was to keep the budget separate because this is a Danville-specific, only applicable to Danville. So the city of Danville has agreed to essentially send an additional amount of funding beyond the 75,000 that we're going to request for Planning Commission to cover the cost of DHB, so we won't be using county funds, things like that. So we're trying to keep the budget separate. So obviously, the year-end carryover is going to be $0. We did not have this previously. We are going to request 25,000 from Danville. You know, I don't know what that amount's going to end up being, but this is kind of what we're projecting for our needs. The DHB does not collect any fees, so there will not be any revenue generated from their services. So it's all going to be dependent, you know, what this budget will look like, dependent on what Danville opts to contribute to us. So for personnel, we have the part-time preservation coordinator. Because she's part-time, she doesn't receive any benefits or things like that. So it's just the salary costs that we're looking at. Right now, we project her to be about $15,300. She's hourly, so it could ebb and flow just a little bit, but we based it off of what the city had her down for last year. We will have to add Joni to our workers' comp insurance policy. We estimated $250. I'm not sure if it's gonna be less or more than that. I haven't reached out to our policy provider yet, but that's something that we'll have to do. And then for office, we have advertising. They typically don't have to advertise for public hearings very often like we do, so she's got about 200. We have a $250 National Preservation Alliance fee, $150 for office supplies, $350 for computer software. We're not sure if she's going to need Microsoft Office. I think she currently might get that through the city, so I'm not sure if we're going to switch her over. And then she's got an iPad that has data on it currently provided through the city, so we talked about doing some type of reimbursement. So I put $350 for that. Attorney services, so Henry is going to be providing.
By the way, I'm not sure you need to get that reimbursed. It's all part of if she's got it from the city, it's fine.
What's that?
You're talking about reimbursement for the iPad?
Well,
potentially?
it's a data plan that they pay monthly so that she can use the iPad out in the field. So that's something that the city's currently paying for. So I met with their financial director. I'm not sure
Do
what her
they-
title is, sorry, Lee
don't-
Compton.
Don't they also have another data plan, this same data plan with somebody, any other person?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have a bunch of their staff people on this data plan,
There's-
so it doesn't make sense to
Just-
set up our
Just
own.
add, no, just, exactly, just ask the question on there, because you're right. You know, 1 to 10 gives this dollar value, 1 to 20 people on it has a lower dollar per person involved with
Yeah.
that type of data plan, just ask. Because I don't care who owns that one, but it's a question of, you're trying to capture that expense into there. It gets in more logistics than anything else, and making sure you move it into a different account every month. It's one of the little items. you gotta
I
get.
don't understand
Are
what
you
you're
trying
saying,
to collect
sorry.
everything associated with this, with the, her operating expense in this budget category in our
Yes,
list here?
yes.
I'm suggesting like the annual National Preservation Alliance money, they specifically spelled that out, that you want to be put in this budget also? Or do they have another location they want to put it in? They're trying to put it all in this line numbers,
I'm-
rather than move money around? Because they're paying us, they're going to give a budget, certain money, the 25,000 at the beginning, and you're just administrating it in this budget. Is that what you're doing?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we're gonna put in a funding request application. The city will agree to a amount, and then I will do a quarterly draw, is typically how it works. So, on July 1, October 1, January 1.
Okay, that's
Uh,
fine. It can work that way, so I'm fine. I just make sure and I understand what I'm just trying to understand in my mind. There's many ways that can be done,
Yeah.
but
So-
I understand what you're doing.
So to piggyback on Sam, we're just going, the city will compensate us for expenses associated with the board directly, not as like a budget item, and then whatever difference would hang with the planning commission.
Yeah, I mean, we've had talks about doing it different ways, because we've got 5,000 allocated for continuing education for the DHB members. It sounds like they very infrequently use that, so there's talk about potentially requesting on a quarterly basis about 20,000, so 5,000 per quarter, and then putting in an additional request if any of the members actually sign up for a training, that 5,000 is needed. But logistically, I'm not sure how the city's gonna wanna handle this. It's their preference, it's their money. But we'll just have to figure out how we can make sure all those expenses are paid
Sure.
in some form or fashion with this separate funding request, so, yeah.
But the intent is we zero this out at the end of the year.
Yeah, I don't think we'll probably have anticipated carryover from year to year with this, just because there's no revenue generated from
Right.
it, so I think we're basically gonna be
And
requesting.
Dan, that's
what
kind of around what I was talking about. This is what you spend is what you get, period.
Right.
It's a zero number. It's not it's not a profit center, it's not a loss center, it is what the numbers are.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So it's gonna function a little bit different than what planning commission does, but,
By the way,
yeah.
Director, how much time are you going to be supporting this? We're not intending to
I
do
don't
any.
know.
Yeah, well, because
Oh.
if it becomes exceptional amount of time, then we need to consider your time for this too.
Yep,
Okay, but you won't know that until you get a little deeper.
yep, it's gonna be a learning experience for me, so I can't say, I just don't know.
I agree like you don't. You don't want to have a single person running this and standing alone the way it is. They're trying to roll it in to a guidance categories.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously gonna be some overlap. Lisa and I are gonna be involved in some way. I mean,
Right.
Joni functions primarily on her own, but she doesn't hold out office hours, things like that. So we'll be taking occasional calls or potentially collecting paperwork and leaving it there for Joni to administer and process and all that, but.
You did a great job this is the format that we've used in P and Z categories and groups. You did a great job transferring what she had last year into this kind of
Thanks.
category.
Yeah, we,
You did a nice job.
they don't have separate line items for
Yeah.
DHB with the city, so, you know, we're all doing a little bit of guesswork. I met with Joni and she laid it out, and then I met with Lee, who's the financial director for the city. And we went through it together, and so this is the best that we can do, but,
No, that's-
it could look slightly different next year,
That's
because,
good.
It makes it easier for people to understand the financial numbers. They're all in the same forum and format, which it's a great job. We'll figure out how it actually functions.
yeah.
If- Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So, yeah, I think we left off with Henry. Henry's gonna be providing the attorney services for, DHB, so we're not gonna be doing a flat fee here, just because it's gonna be a lot more intermittent when Henry's actually providing support for DHB, so we'll do the hourly rate of 160. So we budgeted 3,000, so that's about 18.75 hours, but I think they said for the year right now, they're at about $1,120, the city is saying, for what they've paid for Henry, so, you know, if you extrapolate that out for a year, you're looking at 2,200, so hopefully this is, adequate, but again, it's gonna be application specific. If we get a few difficult applications in that they need attorney support, we could end up exceeding that, so. Staff training, $500, so Joni can keep up to date with, her requirements, and then 5,000 for continuing education. Joni said this is in the legislative budget, so they need to allocate it to make it available for their, DHB members, but they rarely use it all. So that brings us to 25,000. I'm showing 2,500 in legal reserves. Again, I don't know that we're gonna have much in the way of, additional funds that are set aside, just with the way this is gonna function, so I don't really know, but, are there any questions for me?
I think it's a great start.
Yeah.
So we need a motion to approve it now?
Yep.
Anybody make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve it.
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand, please. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Do you have a report or anything from personnel?
We do not have a personnel committee report, but under other new business, Lyndon Smith's here with the Bluegrass ad, so I'm just gonna let him talk for a few minutes if he'd like. I think he has some ideas to bounce off you all. So.
Yeah, just basically came by today to see if there were any comments on the goals and objectives that we distributed last month, and also looking for suggestions for ways to proceed in the future, how you'd like to set up meetings, how you'd like to review draft materials.
Could I ask a question
Sure.
just on your line? You opened it that way. As I got down into the goals and objectives and the latter portions of those, I remember them requesting things to be done as an actual output. And goals and objectives are goals of where you want to do and include, but they're actually asking for some research to be done or development to be done. That's not, I don't envision that being part of this part, the basic write-up, although they're important items to do. Did you notice the same thing on some of the latter?
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that it's on soft soil, I guess you would
Yes.
say, and casting it out there, looking for, is this the kind of thing that gains traction here? Would you like to go that direction? Or we can just, rephrase the same point in order to make it more of a statement.
Yeah, and I also noticed there were, in some of the pages, it'd say this way, in later pages, the same particular type of topic would be reversed. But they were listed in separate categories. You had
Okay.
one category there. I can send you an email note on this. these
Okay.
items, because it's more aberrant. So I was having troubles merging under a general categories things,
Yeah,
because they were written more specific or more broad. And I really expected to have a broader category and the specifics underneath those tabs. Did you want me to throw back at you that much detail in comments?
you can email me that, or you can just give it to me right now.
I didn't bring it with me. I apologize, I didn't know you were coming. But yeah,
Okay.
but yeah.
Do you all want to have like a special work session set up at any time in the future where, you know, we can sit down and spend hour, 2 hour and actually go through goals and objectives and,
I don't know, on a one-to-one, I can give you my notes
okay,
and take a look at it. It's
Yeah.
probably thick, because otherwise, I have
Well,
a way of talking in circles before.
If we
Yeah.
all do that, though, the question might be, and he's got to deal with conflicting notes or,
We'll get exactly.
differences
yeah,
of
yeah,
opinions
that's the-
amongst
That's
us.
the awkwardness of this,
yeah.
yeah, is the way it was.
okay.
But
Well, yeah, just email me those things. I'll go over them and make some suggested
And
changes.
I don't mind sharing it with I'll share my email with you so you can go through
Yeah.
it, but
Yeah,
it's
Well, and
that
I-
first shot that's always the hardest
And I
one.
haven't completed, but I've got notes too. so-
Well, so
Okay.
it's the way
Yeah.
it's the way we process it, I'm sure it is.
okay,
Because
well,
when we're done, this group has to apply it.
right,
And that's
Yeah.
why, if it's not something that I see a path,
right,
putting it in this early is not necessarily appropriate. It should be reviewed by a much larger group as a decision to put it in.
correct.
And what you have is a collection of, looks like, comments that occurred over time. And as, over time, if your write-up is chronological, which it probably is, as you got further in, people got more detailed
Okay,
as compared to the early conversations.
Yeah,
And it's a difficult task to munch this into a nice format, very difficult task. I give you an attaboy, it's a challenge. But that's what we find, some people are very good at munching it and pushing it together.
Okay,
to make it
okay.
reasonable.
well, one of the things we often do is we'll take the existing goals and objectives and, you know, based on experience in the past, you know, what are the issues that come up that aren't addressed in those goals and objectives, and just go through a process of refining statements up until you get to what you want. And plus, it's the process too. The process can be very cumbersome. I know I just showed up here this morning without being on the agenda or anything, but it was just a chance to get to talk to everybody without having to special call a meeting or anything like that.
Yeah.
We can use email or Zoom meetings or anything that makes the process continue forward, because it's,
What I got into was, in my mind, there were items that I read that are not in today's comp plan.
okay,
And when they become new items, that's a new direction. And maybe that is indeed where it's coming, that we need to go.
Okay.
But those tend to be more difficult to apply,
uh-huh,
because
yeah,
having time to work with, not that I've been here an enormous number of years, but having time to work with what we have today, I understand.
okay.
Now, I need to understand then what it is, when this thing's published out, what I'm gonna need to do with the next block of knowledge.
Okay,
So-
Do we have a summary of the input that was given by the public in the open meetings?
Yeah,
that-
I typed up all my notes and put them in a spreadsheet for each of the jurisdictions, so we do have that. It's not
I mean,
in
I would-
probably the best format
I know,
to
but we should be
sift through, but-
considering that input when we considering the
Yeah.
goals and inputs. And, you know, I would like to see what that input was, so I can see what the public said
Mm-hmm.
when I look at these goals and objectives and say, you know, did we pretty much capture in general all of those?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing is process. Oh, obviously, eventually, the city and county have to approve the goals and objectives.
Yeah.
Is it, we go through it first, and then And, I mean, the process is the Planning and Zoning Commission kind of goes through the goals and objectives first.
Yeah.
And then makes a recommendation to the city and the county that we've taken the public input, we've looked at what we had before, you consolidate it, this is what we recommend as the goals and objectives. Because we had that standing committee for a while that was meeting, but I take it we don't bring it to them, the goals and objectives, before we approve it.
I mean, we can do it however we want, but the planning commission is gonna have to have a hearing on it and make a recommendation and send it to each of
A
the
public
legislative bodies. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, I would like to see what the input was from the general public meetings
Okay.
before I, as part of considering, does this capture what we think
That'd be a good add, yeah.
could capture?
Can you share that with all of us?
Yeah,
again?
yeah, I can send that out. We can do a presentation on it. I don't know if you all want to wait until the next planning commission meeting, or if we want to try and schedule something in between as a special call meeting, or,
Well, I think you're even before to review and understand the notes that you recovered would be a first step, but that doesn't require a public meeting at that point.
yeah.
At some point, we will get to the public meeting.
Well, I think if we meet within a quorum, it has to be
Mm-hmm,
an open meeting.
right.
So it'd have to be a special call. If
But
you want to
but
do
if
a
you were able
smaller
to send,
committee, then,
if you were able to send that to us and we could look at it,
yep.
then I think
I
dealing
see.
with it at the
Director,
next
I understand
public
what you're
meeting
saying.
would be okay?
I understand, forgive me.
I don't
Yeah.
think we need a special called meeting. I think dealing with it at the next,
But if we're gonna talk it as joint, requires a special called meeting. It's a public meeting if we get together.
yeah, understand.
Yeah.
Well, the only reason-
Individually, we don't have to.
The only reason you do a special call meeting is just to move the process along faster, is that right?
Essentially, because if we wait until the March meeting, then we're probably looking at maybe bringing this in April. We're probably looking at bringing it in April anyway, but it could potentially be a tight turnaround for Lyndon if we don't give him input until March, and then, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll let Lyndon say what works best for him, but,
Yeah, I think just email back and forth and try and refine the statements that are in there until you start to get comfortable with them. I think there is a lot of background material from the public hearings and public meetings and things like that. And there's a large body of it, really, but
I found in my case, not having to attend except one public meeting or two. I didn't want to hear that public meetings. I need to know what the thing says.
boil it down.
The words are gonna be what I've gotta base my future on.
I
Sure,
think it's our
okay.
obligation.
So if I don't understand it, then we need to go back and ask questions on it. Which
Okay.
is very much what you're on track.
Okay.
So thank you. for
Yeah,
coming.
well, thanks for having me. I'll work with Michaela, and really, what we want to do is keep the process easy on you. There's a lot of fatigue that sort of builds up, working with all this material and working with it over a long period of time. So whatever meets the least resistance, we'll take that form to move the process forward.
Okay.
yeah. So do you all want to continue having Lyndon come to each meeting? And just, we can do a small work session at the end of each planning commission meeting? Is that something you all want to see? Do you want us to try and
If-
reform that steering committee that we had previously? I mean, we kind of have two different paths that we can go on, but Lyndon asked me and I wanted it to be your all's decision, not mine, so,
I'd rather do it at a regular scheduled meeting, just tack it onto our meeting.
yeah.
I would like to limit the amount of time that we apply to it initially, only because that bring the key factors in early.
Yeah.
But if you don't, you're correct, if you don't start doing it, you're not gonna finish it. We're not gonna get it done.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, I
Tag
mean,
in.
I don't think we'll say we have to meet for an hour every day. It's
No.
just like this. If there's just a quick update, we'll do a quick update. If there's some more detail that we need to get into, it might be a little bit longer, but it would just be dependent. But,
The detail we can handle, I think, by email back and forth with comments.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Well,
We'll
did
just
we
work
wanna-
and refine it.
so you could probably get us the comments in the next week, your summary of the.
Oh, yeah, I can send it out right away.
Yeah.
They're done.
Did we want to
Lyndon's
set a
had them.
deadline when we all give our first round of comments to Lyndon?
Right.
Say, it doesn't mean you have to have a comment, but if you have a comment on the goals and objectives, then please get it to Lyndon by,
End of
some-
next week?
2 weeks, a week?
2 weeks?
I would say
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
by 2 weeks from today, whatever the day that
Yeah.
is,
I
March
think that's
something.
reasonable.
Yeah. March,
13.
I'm not sure. March 13th, Wednesday, March 13th.
Yeah.
Oh,
The Ides of March.
yep.
And then did you say there's still a question before us as to what the next step would be? And that is, do we develop the goals and objectives? Do we approve them, or do we want to take them to the small committee that was formed?
Well, I think that's the question, whether we want to try and reform that committee. Obviously, we haven't met in a while. It was never really Joe's intention to have that steering committee. Lyndon feels differently and would like some type of committee to be formed. So whether I try and reform that steering committee that we had previously with the judge and mayor, Earl, Josh, a few members of the planning commission, or if we want to just have that committee be here at the end of each planning commission meeting to basically give that direction for Lyndon. I think those are kind of the two options that he floated and feels comfortable with. So it's really up to you all. We could kind of do a mixture of both. I could try and bring it to the committee after we have a work session here, just to give them a heads up and an opportunity for input before we bring it to the full commission, or, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's,
my preference, or my thought would be that you talked about putting together like a preliminary input from us before we vote and finalize it.
Right.
We then bring it back that committee and say, here's the kind of the preliminary look at goals and objectives, but before we bring it to the planning commission to vote on it, we'd like you guys to have your chance to provide some input on it.
okay.
We got criticized, correctly or incorrectly, back in 2008 or 9 or 10, whenever the last really full comprehensive plan was doing, that said we didn't do enough of it publicly. And I don't know if those are fair criticisms. What I'm saying, this would certainly give the city and county then a chance to, the committee that we formed, to look at the preliminary goals and objectives and provide input on it before we then finalize it and vote on it.
So come back to who's on the committee. How are we managing?
Well, like, you started rattling them
Previously,
off.
we had a subgroup.
We already, yeah, we did. We'll have to repopulate it with a few members here, because I think Jeffrey may have been on it, maybe not. We may have had Tom Ruby's on it, I'm on it.
It was not on.
I think Tom and Jeffrey were.
I think it was Terry and Tom, and then we had you and maybe Sam as our backups.
Well,
Alternates.
I was the
Alternates.
backup because I had too many things going on, so I backed
Okay.
way up.
Yep. It
But
could have
I'm
been Jeff
a bit
was,
noisy with comments.
but, it just seems a little,
Rita there
early,
was,
I don't-
But what we present to, what we have asked them to look at should be a preliminary shot. It should be just goals and objectives with our input after we've gotten your input from what the people said. And once you kind of got that as to, this is what I've heard from everybody, and I would think before we would officially bring it to the commission and vote on it, I think it would be a good idea to reform that commission and say, here's what has come out of the goals and objectives, the public hearings. We want you to take a look at it, comment on it, before we vote on it as a commission.
So Terry, you're thinking there'd be, our next meeting, we would see the preliminary, and then there'd be a committee meeting before we would vote on
Yeah,
the following meeting?
and I just don't know
So like
if we will be
April?
able, if we get our input to Lyndon by the 13th or whatever it was, if he'll have enough time to pull something together to have it at our next commission meeting, or if it'll be the April commission meeting. But
yeah, and, with something like this, it can end up spanning two planning commission meetings, just because, if we get good turnout from the public to come in and provide comment, we might need time to bring back a new draft that addresses some of those comments or concerns, et cetera. So we might not necessarily be voting and sending that recommendation until the following meeting. It just depends how it goes, but,
Till April.
Lyndon, are you intending to write the final version so it's consistent in text?
Sure.
And tone? Is that what your intention is?
Yes.
Because obviously, we all write in our own mannerisms,
Right.
and then that offers an issue of interpretation probably.
Well, they come from a lot of different directions and they
Yes.
take a different path, so.
That's good. I appreciate knowing that, because you can merge and take whatever you read and merge it into a common format.
Yes.
That's one of the key factors. Okay. Terry, I think it's a good idea to try to just work with what we have at this point to start. And I'm more than glad to add more time to doing this than I was doing for a while.
So how are we gonna form the committee? Who's gonna decide who's on the committee?
You will volunteer.
Well, it's existing, we already know the names of who was on it before.
Yeah, it
He
was,
said repopulated, so I was.
You may have to, I don't know,
it was the three mayors plus the judge executive, the city manager from Danville, the county administrator, and then I think a additional city council member from Perryville was on it. Junction can bring whoever else they want to bring in. And then it was Tom and Terry, Josh Morgan, the city engineer with Danville, and myself, and then the ad. But if there's any input on, if you want to reformat that, we can.
So has that group met?
No, we haven't met in quite some time, but we really formed that committee to help with the process of identifying and hiring a firm, so we ended up with the
Sure.
ad.
Yeah.
And then they started through some of the beginning process to help us outline dates that could work and help us organize the public input meetings and things like
Yeah.
that. And we did some visioning exercises with them and more members of the legislative bodies, but beyond that, no. Like I said, it wasn't really Joe's intention to have
Sure.
it function as a steering committee. They kind of just helped us get the process off the ground. Like I said, Lyndon feels differently, so if we want to reform that committee, we can. It sounds like we at least want to run the goals and objectives through them. If
I
we,
guess I'm confused, because that's not the committee that I thought we were talking about. I mean, there is a committee like that with all of the bodies, but some of the discussion we just had was like a subgroup of this
That's what I thought.
commission.
I thought it was a subgroup to get the basics that we need
To
now.
be able to come to a proposed item and then pass it to the legislative bodies.
so you want to do a subcommittee of planning commission members that we
That was
run it through?
my understanding of what we were talking about.
Oh, well, that's not what we were, that's not what I thought we were talking, I thought we were
Oh,
talking
okay,
about
I'm
the planning
confused.
commission giving our input to Linden by the 13th of March.
Okay,
And we're gonna get input from the folks, what the general population said, before we provide that input. So Michaela's gonna send us the summary of what we heard from the sessions.
right.
And then we're individually gonna look at that and send our comments to Linden by the 13th.
Yes,
And then I thought he would come back to us with kind of a summary, a summary and questions where there's conflicts and stuff.
right.
And then before we would finalize it, I thought we would bring it in front of the steering, what I call the steering committee.
Yeah, that original group that had met and.
The original group that had met
Decision that
and said, out of this process, here are the, before we, the planning commission vote on it and then send it formally to them to vote on it, that we give them a chance to provide input. Now, we can skip that step if we want, but have Lyndon's input here, I guess, as to whether he thinks there should.
So Dan, is that
Yeah,
much different?
okay, now I understand, and that makes sense.
Okay.
But from a timing standpoint, getting that steering committee together is gonna be tough.
Well,
just
that
for
wouldn't
schedules.
be something that would occur until after the March meeting.
Yeah, I don't even know if it has to be a physical meeting or if we just send it out for comment, but I'm gonna let Lyndon direct this. It's.
Yet the best possible thing, I think, is if we can get just emails going around and sort of collect comments and go through a process of continual refinement and having the input of the full planning commission, having the input of the previous committee, and, just make sure that everybody gets to put eyes on it and gets a chance to make suggestions, comments, additions, anything like that, before you start to take action with it, before you vote on it.
Okay, so what you suggested is rather than try to physically pull them together, the steering committee, once we've had our March 13th input to you.
Right.
And you pull together kind of the preliminary of that.
Okay.
That you'd suggest and that we would then send that out to those individual members and ask them to individually review it? Is that what you were saying, Lyndon?
Yeah, just have them go through there.
And send any comments
and
back
say,
to you?
You left this out, or the wording on this one is not quite right. As long as we can, keep moving forward. That's a lot of people to have their input into it. So, March the 13th, I can take your comments, I can go through, I can refine the goals and objectives and send it back to you, is that satisfactory to you? And then send it on to others. In fact, we can post it on the ads website and just, open it up for public comment.
Yeah, I was thinking we could have some type of public comment period prior to the meeting. It kind of gives us a chance to address
that makes
potentially
sense.
some of the concerns up front. We have that email list that you could send it out to and then post it on the comp plan
All
website
the
and our
people who
website.
attended the public meetings and
Yeah.
make it open to them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So, that can be hard if you get overwhelmed with comments, but hopefully there's a common theme of some sort within them
Well,
that we can address.
But it addresses Terry's point that, there was a perception that there wasn't enough public comment.
Yep.
Yeah, and when you write the comp plan, it's very lofty, and then it slowly digs into items of value or deep, as I refer to it, that are actionable.
Right.
That's really what we're looking for. But you've had so many public hearings with different people involved with it, not everybody has heard all of this. There's a small group.
Right. Now, that's
That's the challenge.
the best access that we can give the public for them to get involved with it is to just, come up with a draft, post it, and say, give us your comments.
Mm-hmm.
What are the issues and which way do you feel you should move on the issues? And, then eventually we can get this refined to the point where, when you guys are comfortable with that, you'll vote on it, go to the legislative bodies, they'll vote on it, and we'll see how we end up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any other business they want to bring before the commission?
I do not.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
I second.
Second, all in favor? All right, thank you very much.